My name's Victor. I'm 42. I've been a night janitor at a public middle school for 6 years. I took the job because it's stable, good benefits, quiet work. Or at least it used to be. My shift runs from 3 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. during the school year. Once the buses leave and the after-school programs wrap up, the building empties fast. By 7 p.m., it's just me and sometimes one other custodian on the opposite wing. The routine matters in a place like that. You clear trash, you sweep, you mop. You shut off lights row by row. You check doors twice. You learn what normal sounds like. HVAC cycling, locker doors settling, the building ticking as it cools. You also learn what doesn't belong. That Tuesday was normal until it wasn't. Around 9:25 p.m., I finished cleaning classroom 214, 7th grade math. I remember because the teacher always leaves her whiteboard half erased. I wiped the desks, vacuumed, stacked chairs, turned off the lights, and closed the door behind me. I always glance through the narrow window in the door before walking away. Pitch black. He looked at me like I was joking. I walked to the switches. They were up now. On. I didn't remember flipping them. I hadn't touched them since the last time. Miguel shrugged. Old wiring. We both stood there longer than necessary. It felt wrong to argue with a simple explanation. Old building, faulty circuits. But something bothered me. When I first entered that room at the beginning of my shift, the whiteboard had half-erased equations. When I re-entered after the second time the lights came on, the board was fully clean. No ghostwriting, no smudges, just blank. Miguel said maybe I wiped it without remembering. That's possible. But I don't clean whiteboards unless they're assigned to my rotation. That room wasn't that night. The aftermath is what stayed with me. For the next week, I paid attention to 214. Every time I shut the lights off, I waited at the end of the hallway, watching through the glass. Twice more, I saw a faint flicker, like someone flipping them on and off quickly. Too fast for a normal delay. Facilities checked the wiring the following month. They said everything tested fine. The final detail is small. The security camera in that hallway records continuously. On the night in question, there's a gap in the footage between 9:37 p.m. and 9:44 p.m. 7 minutes missing. Administration blamed a system update. Maybe that's true, but I still work that shift. And every time I pass 214 after turning off the lights, I don't look back anymore. Because once I did, and the lights were already on before I reached the end of the hall. My name's Harold. I'm 58. I've been a school custodian for almost 20 years. I like routine. I like empty hallways. Kids are loud. The building at night is predictable. Except the intercom. Our school has an old PA system. The kind with a central office microphone that feeds into every classroom speaker. It shouldn't activate unless someone is in the front office pressing the button. No one is in the front office after 6 p.m. My shift goes until midnight. Around 10:12 p.m. one Thursday, I was mopping near the science wing when I heard a sharp pop overhead. Then static, low and brief, from the classroom speaker. I stopped moving. Sometimes the system tests itself. That's what I told myself. Then I heard a click, the unmistakable click of the mic being engaged, and faint breathing. Not loud, not exaggerated, just air moving across a microphone somewhere. I stood still, waiting for a voice. Nothing. Just 3 seconds of breathing. Then the click again. Silence. I walked to the nearest classroom and stepped inside. The speaker was mounted near the ceiling. No light indicator. Nothing visibly active. I radioed the security guard at the front gate. He confirmed no one had entered or exited since 8 p.m. I decided to walk to the main office anyway. It's a long hallway from the science wing, the kind that feels longer at night. The office door was locked. I unlocked it with my key. Lights off inside. I turned them on. The PA microphone sat on the desk like always. Button not depressed. No signs of use. I leaned closer to it. There was a faint warmth to the metal base. Maybe from ambient room temperature. Maybe not. As I turned to leave the office, the speaker above the secretary's desk popped again. Static. Then the same breathing, only clearer this time. I was standing directly under the main unit. No one was near it. I looked down at the console. The mic button wasn't pressed, but the small red indicator light was faintly glowing. Not fully on, just dim, like a weak connection. The breathing lasted longer this time, about 5 seconds, then stopped abruptly. I unplugged the unit from the wall. The red light went out immediately. No more sounds that night. Facilities checked the PA the next day. They found nothing wrong. Said maybe feedback from another channel? Cross signal? Maybe. But here's the part that unsettled me. The next evening, before my shift started, one of the teachers mentioned something casually. She said her classroom speaker had clicked on during her last period that day, around 2 p.m. Just once. No announcement. Just breathing. I didn't tell her what I heard. I just nodded and said the system was old. I still unplug the main mic when I work late, but sometimes around 10 p.m., I hear a faint pop from a hallway speaker anyway, like something trying to connect, even when the system isn't plugged in. My name's Ethan. I'm 30. I work in IT support. Last winter, I booked an Airbnb downtown for a 3-day certification exam. I needed reliable Wi-Fi and quiet. I didn't get much of either the second night. The listing was a modern studio in a converted warehouse building. Keypad entry. Entire unit. Good reviews. Nothing dramatic. The first day was normal. I studied, ordered takeout, slept fine. The second night, I got back around 9 p.m. after grabbing coffee downstairs. The hallway outside the unit was silent. Thick industrial carpet. No echo. When I unlocked the door, the first thing I noticed was the closet. It was slightly open. Not wide, just an inch or two. I was almost sure I had shut it earlier. I always close doors, it's a habit. But I didn't panic. I assumed I misremembered. I set my bag down, checked the bathroom, checked under the bed. Closet had extra towels and a folded air mattress. Nothing else. I closed it firmly. I studied until about 1 a.m. Around then, I heard something subtle. Not inside the room, in the hallway outside the unit. A slow step, then another. Not unusual. People come and go. But the steps stopped directly outside my door. No knock. No key. Just silence. I muted my laptop. I expected to hear the keypad beep if someone was trying another unit. Nothing.
After maybe 15 seconds, the steps moved again, slowly, past my door. I looked through the peephole. Empty hallway. I told myself it was someone waiting for a rideshare or confused about their unit. I went back to studying. At 2:13 a.m., I heard a soft click from inside the room. I turned slowly. The closet door was open again, wider this time, about 6 inches. I stood up slowly. I hadn't touched it since closing it earlier. No windows open, no draft. I walked over and looked inside. Same towels, same air mattress. Nothing disturbed. I felt stupid for feeling tense, but something didn't sit right. I closed it again. This time I pressed the latch until I heard it catch clearly. I sat back down. I didn't even make it 10 minutes. Another sound. Not a click. A shift, like fabric brushing against drywall. From the closet. I stood there, staring. Nothing moved. I walked over again. Before I touched the handle, I noticed something I hadn't before. The closet door didn't have a latch plate. The metal piece on the frame where the latch catches was missing entirely, which meant when I, quote, closed it, it wasn't actually locking into anything. It was just resting shut.
I checked the floor near the hinge. There were small scratch marks in the laminate. Fresh, lighter than the rest of the wear. Like the door had been opened and closed repeatedly. I backed up slowly. At 2:27 a.m., I heard the hallway steps again. This time, slower. They stopped outside my door. And I heard something else. The faintest pressure against the door, like someone leaning their weight on it. I stood still and didn't breathe. After maybe 20 seconds, the pressure released. No footsteps retreating, just absence. I didn't sleep. Morning came. The closet door was closed, fully. When I opened it, the towels were stocked differently, not dramatically, but the folded edge that had faced outward earlier now faced inward. That's the kind of detail that makes you question your own memory. Before checking out, I messaged the host. "Hey,
just wondering, has anyone ever had issues with the closet door? He replied, no, that closet is sealed. Guests aren't supposed to use it. Sealed. I stared at the door again. There was no seal, no lock, nothing preventing it from opening from inside. I checked the listing later that week. The unit photos had been updated. The closet was no longer visible in any shot.
My name's Liza. I'm 26. I'm a grad student. 2 friends and I booked an Airbnb for a weekend trip near the coast. It was advertised as a private upstairs suite. We didn't realize that wording mattered until 2 a.m. The house was split level. The listing clearly stated we'd have the entire upstairs, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchenette. The host lived off-property. When we arrived Friday evening, the downstairs lights were off. The staircase to the upper level had a door at the bottom. It was unlocked when we came in. We assumed that was normal. The upstairs felt cozy. Slanted ceilings, slightly older wood floors. The listing didn't mention anyone else having access. We went to sleep around midnight. At 1:52 a.m., I woke up. Not to a loud sound, to vibration. Subtle, rhythmic, like footsteps on stairs. Slow. 1 step. Pause. 1 step. I opened my eyes and listened. My friend in the other bed was asleep. The sound continued. It was coming from below, up the staircase. Then it stopped, right outside the upstairs door. There was no lock on that interior door, just a standard handle. I stared at it in the dark. Nothing moved. I almost convinced myself it was house settling. Then the handle turned slightly. Not fully, just enough to click. I sat up. The sound stopped instantly. I didn't move. After maybe 30 seconds, I heard steps descending. Slowly, back down the stairs. In the morning, we joked about it, but something bothered me. The downstairs door at the base of the staircase. It was locked now from the inside. We hadn't locked it the night before. None of us had even touched it after entering. We asked the host casually if anyone else had access to the lower level. He replied, no, the downstairs isn't connected internally. That made no sense. There was a staircase. We had used it. We sent him a picture of the stairs from our unit. He responded, that staircase leads to a storage crawl space. It doesn't connect to another living area. But we had clearly seen a hallway and a living room downstairs when we arrived. Lights off, furniture covered in plastic. We went back down to check before leaving. The staircase now ended at a blank wall. No hallway, no living room. Just a short landing and a closed door marked storage. We stood there staring at it. My friend insisted maybe we misinterpreted the layout in the dark. Maybe the angle was different. But I clearly remember seeing a couch through the open doorway when we first walked in. And I clearly remember that door at the bottom being unlocked. The listing disappeared a month later. I still replay the rhythm of those steps. They weren't random. They were climbing toward us. Got it. So this time, we build it to feel like something unnatural is happening. Let it lean toward ghost territory. Let the listener almost commit to that explanation. And then, at the end, we drop a completely logical reason, but the logic is worse, not comforting, not relieving. The kind of explanation that makes you wish it had been a ghost. My name's Calvin. I'm 39. I've been a janitor at a public high school for about 4 years. Most nights are predictable. Trash, floors, bathrooms. The building sounds alive at night, but you learn which sounds belong. This one didn't. It started in the freshman hallway. Around 8:50 p.m., I was waxing the floors when I heard a metallic snap. Then another. Then a locker door slamming shut. Not loud, but sharp enough to echo. I stopped the buffer machine and listened. Silence. Sometimes lockers don't latch properly. They spring open, then fall closed. That's normal. I went down the hall. Everything looked closed. I tugged on a few randomly. All latched. I went back to waxing. 5 minutes later, bang. 3 lockers in quick succession, left side of the hall. I walked back faster this time. Locker 142 was slightly open, just an inch. I shut it firmly, tested it. Secure. As I turned to leave, I heard a slow creak behind me. Locker 138 opened halfway. No wind in that hallway, no windows nearby. The air felt still. I stood there, staring at it. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead. I stepped closer and pulled it shut. Inside was empty. No books, no bag, just metal shelves. I pressed my palm against the cool surface of the door. Waited. Nothing. I finished that hallway and moved on. Around 10:12 p.m., it happened again. But this time it wasn't random. It was sequential. Locker 131. Pause. 132. Pause. 133. Each opening just slightly, like something moving down the row. I didn't move. I just listened. Metal shifting, latch popping, then silence. I walked down the row slowly. Each of those lockers was slightly ajar, in order. That's when my brain started reaching for things it shouldn't. Old building, air pressure, but pressure doesn't move in sequence. I shut them all, took a breath, and walked away. The final thing happened just before I clocked out. As I passed that hallway one last time, every locker on the left side was open. Every single one. Perfectly aligned. Open at the same angle. That's the moment that genuinely unsettled me, because it felt deliberate. I didn't close them. I just left. The next morning, I reported it. Maintenance came in that afternoon. They called me down to show me something. Inside the ceiling above that hallway was a narrow crawl space, recently disturbed insulation, and thin scratch marks along the metal ventilation duct. Animal control was called. They found a man living inside the duct system. Not for one night, for weeks. He had entered through a damaged rooftop hatch and was moving between ceiling cavities. The lockers had top ventilation gaps that connected into the duct void. When he crawled across the duct directly above certain lockers, the vibration popped weak latches open. The sequential pattern matched the duct layout. He had been sleeping above the freshman hallway. They found food wrappers and a backpack up there. No one knows how long he'd been inside the building. Now I know why the lockers opened. It wasn't a ghost. It was someone above me, listening. And when I think about the last night, when all of them were open at once, I realize something else. That crawl space only runs along half the hallway. The other half has no duct access, yet those lockers were open too. Animal control said maybe pressure shift, maybe vibration, but that explanation only works for the ones under the duct, not the rest. And that's the part that still makes me walk faster past that hallway.
My name's Marcus. I'm 44. I work night maintenance at a private academy. The auditorium is the worst part of my shift. Big, dark, empty seats facing a single stage. Sound carries in strange ways there. One Thursday night around 9:30 p.m., I was vacuuming the aisle steps. That's when I heard it. A single footstep behind me, on carpet, soft. I turned immediately. No one there. The auditorium doors were closed. I walked to them, locked. I went back to vacuuming. 2 minutes later, another step, then another. Slow, descending the aisle. I shut off the vacuum. Listened. Nothing. I told myself acoustics can echo weirdly in that room, but then I heard it clearly. A weight shift in one of the seats, the faint thud of fabric compressing, like someone sitting down. I walked up the aisle slowly, row by row. No one there. The stage lights were off, just emergency exit glow. I felt watched, not in a dramatic way, just aware of the emptiness. Then came the worst part. Applause. Not loud, not a full crowd, just 3 or 4 slow claps from the back corner. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The sound stopped immediately. That was the first time I genuinely felt something was wrong. I checked the control booth. Empty. Sound system off. I left the auditorium lights on for the rest of the shift. The next day, I told the facilities manager. He didn't laugh. Instead, he asked me if I'd checked under the stage. I hadn't. Apparently, the auditorium had a substage storage cavity accessible through a maintenance hatch near the back curtains. We opened it together. Inside, we found bedding, empty water bottles, and a portable speaker. Someone had been living under the stage. The acoustics in that room amplified everything they did. Footsteps under the wooden subfloor traveled up through the aisle structure. The applause? That was the portable speaker, battery-powered, probably used to scare whoever discovered them. Security footage from the exterior showed a former theater student who had been expelled months earlier entering through an unlocked backstage door on multiple nights. He had been sleeping under the stage,
listening to rehearsals during the day, coming out only after midnight. That's the logical explanation. And honestly, I wish that was the whole story. But here's the detail that unsettled me more than the applause. The bedding under the stage was positioned directly beneath row G, seat 12. When I checked the footage from that night, the only seat that slightly shifted was row G, seat 12, like someone had stood up from it. Above him,